Now 2 queens in the small blind.
You live in Bulgaria?
Just limps in, thinking that Mateos can put a lot of pressure on him in this kind of bubble situation. I like it.
Does not fall for it. He considered.
We are taking a look at a very interesting, intricate spot from the final table of the $25,000 buy-in Super High Roller Series event that pokergo put on in Cyprus recently. They are at the final table, but they are on the bubble. They are not in the money yet. So everyone folds around to Wakil in the small blind, who is one of the shorter stacks at the final table. There are 2 other stacks with roughly the same amount. He decides to limp with his pocket queens. Now you may say, shouldn't he just raise it up every time? And the answer is no. This is a spot where you can easily limp and then limp shove over an Adrian Mateos big stack, big blind raise. And if you do limp and he checks it, well, you'll go to the flop and that'll be okay. He certainly could raise. I think it's reasonable with his 20 big blind stack, but he does not have to. You can mix it up, depending on how you expect your opponent to play. And in general, I would expect Adrian Mateos, one of the absolute best tournament players in the world today, in the big blind to be pretty aggressive with his close to chip leading big stack. That said, he has the 8-6 offsuit, a hand that could raise, could check. He decides to check. Let's go to the flop.
Oh, boy.
And does flop the open ender.
Well, we've got action nonetheless. If a check raise is coming for Mateos, he's just hoping it's anything other than all in. And he's getting what he wants. Wakil just check calls with the 2 queens.
The flop comes 7 of clubs, 5 of clubs, 3 of spades. This is a really interesting scenario for Wakil because he is highly incentivized to not get his money in unless he thinks he has a huge advantage. The problem he's going to have here, though, is that a lot of Mateos's checking range will contain hands that do okay on the 7-5-3 2 clubs board. So he should actually be checking a lot. In general, when you're on the bubble and you are the shorter stack involved in the pot, you want to be checking a lot. So he does that. He checks. Mateos, with his open ender, goes for a 1 big blind bet. And a lot of people may look at this and think, oh, easy check raise with the pocket queens. And if there were no payout implications, that would be very, very true. However, because Wakil really doesn't want to go broke, he should just call. This may sound crazy. This may sound overly cautious. But when you are on the bubble, and there are other people who could reasonably go broke before you, you want to do a whole lot of checking and calling, and that also helps protect your checking and calling range that may end up having to fold out by the river. Like with these pocket queens, we're not really trying to fold out on the river unless it runs off pretty nasty. But with a hand like a 7 or a 5, you're going to have to fold to substantial aggression. So because of that, you're going to want to protect your calling range by including some hands that you really don't plan on folding. So, Wakil, check calls. Let's go to the turn.
Turn brings another 5. 150K in the pot. Wakil 485K behind.
Now curious to see how Mateos proceeds with the open ender. Turn pairing. Could Wakil have a 5 in his hand? And like ace 5 might make some sense. King 5. Mateos says, oh, I also have 5s. I would have bet on the flop. I'm going to bet again on the turn.
To the tune of 125,000.
Here would seem insane.
The turn is the 5 of hearts. Wakil checks. Mateos now decides to bet again with his open ender, which again is perfectly fine and reasonable. Now, as Mateos thinks he's going to get shoved on more often, which is not what Wakil should be doing that often, but if he does think he's going to be getting shoved on if he bets, Mateos definitely does not want to bet this hand because he has pretty decent equity. When you are sitting here with, well, 18% as we see in this spot, you don't want to bet and have to fold out that 18% because 18% is a real number. You would much rather fold out a hand that has far less equity, like 10% or something like that. So you have to be careful betting in these scenarios, but Mateos probably realizes Wakil knows how to play decently well. I mean, we're at the final table of a $25,000 buy-in tournament after all. So he does go for the 4 big blind bet. Let's see how Wakil proceeds.
When you know Mateos could also have a 5.
Check calls once more.
I don't think he had any choice but to do just that.
About a pot-sized bet left behind.
As on the flop, Wakil needs to call to protect the rest of his calling range. It may sound very, 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 very cautious and passive to check and call in the spot, especially since Mateos could easily just rip it in on the river, which you plan on calling a lot of the time. But this is a situation where Wakil needs to just call. And he does. Let's go to the river.
And the river brings another 7.
Oh my gosh, what a run out. This is filthy. Does Mateos plan on emptying the clip if Wakil checks his 2 queens once more? Certainly Mateos knows he cannot win at showdown with 8 high.
Does he go for it here? And if he does, what a spot Wakil will be put into.
And I think it's reasonable for Mateos to play any 5 and any 7 in this regard.
Yeah.
Betting flop, betting turn. Mateos might be a little concerned, or this is posturing. Kind of reverse telling. Would he do this with a full house? Take his time before just moving it in? There's also a consideration of just simply giving up. We've been called on the flop and the turn. Was I being trapped all along? Does this bluff actually work, or do I expect to get called? No,
Going for it here is Adrian Mateos.
My oh my, the conquistador. On the
Decision
stone
time
cold bubble.
for the Canadian. $0 for 7th place, 65,000 to 6th.
The 7 of Hearts river is an absolute disaster for Wakil because a lot of Adrian's flop betting and turn betting range is going to contain either a 7 or a 5. And now you lose to all of those. Wakil checks. Mateos puts them all in with the 8-6. This is not something you have to do every single time with the 8-6. If you do shove every 8-6 in the spot, you're probably over bluffing a little bit. But because there is a large payout jump here, the bubble, if there's ever a spot to be going for it, this is it. Mateos is not afraid. He loads it in. And what I want to know before we move forward is, what do you think Wakil will do? You think he's going to call, or do you think he's going to fold? Take a second, think about it. Let me know in the comments section down below. Tell me what you would have done. Don't be results oriented. And click the like and subscribe button while you're down there.
Eliminated on day 2 on a 65K bubble.
No.
I think he's got one more time bank left. Does
Wow.
let go of the queens. The conquistador gets one through.
Filthy. Absolutely filthy.
You guys have to tell me because I asked. I said, please let me know. So she has to tell me.
But he mistake. She mistake.
You use one, take one.
He not have.
After a lot of deliberation, Wakil folds. That may sound insane to some of you because a lot of draws missed, but in Game Theory Optimal World, Queens is actually roughly break even in this spot. It mixes, assuming Adrian is playing perfectly. Now. If Adrian overbluffs this spot, Perhaps he takes every 8-6 and every 9-8 and every other hand that can't win at the showdown and shoves it. Queens is going to become a really easy call. And in general, I think in spots like this, when you're playing against someone who is a good, strong, well-studied, world-class player, perhaps if you don't normally play these games, but they may think that you're going to be somewhat easy to push around. Now, I don't know anything about Wakil. Maybe he's playing these games on a very regular basis. But if someone like Jonathan Little, was there playing a $300,000 buy-in tournament, which would be bigger than normal for me, if I had the queens in the spot, I'm going to snap it off, because I think, if anything, people like Adrian, who are regulars in those games, are going to think they can perhaps push me around. And if they think they can push you around, they will try to do it. And if they'll try to do it, you can't let them do it. You got to find the call and accept your bubble. I'll talk to you next time.